Welcome back, everybody. It's Jack Graham and John Pedersen for another We Talk Photo edition. What is this one?
103.
103, man. Time's flying.
Making progress.
Time's flying. So, a few weeks ago, we did a podcast with Cole Thompson, who's been here a couple of times, and he's listening to this, and I'm not saying it because he's here. He is a photographer. He's one of my favorite photographers. I get around. Anyhow, so it's good to have Cole back and the eminent John Barclay, who does some workshops with Cole. But today, we started talking. I don't know if it was on the podcast. We have John Pedersen and John Barclay here, so I'm going to call John Pedersen JP for today. JP, did we bring music up in that podcast?
I think it was before the podcast, Jack. I think we were chatting.
And we started talking about how music has a relationship to photography, especially jazz music and kind of the photography that the four of us play around in. So we're going to record this podcast. It's going to go on YouTube, on the We Talk Photo YouTube channel, which is new for those of you who don't know about it. So if you go to YouTube and type in We Talk Photo, you'll be able to see this. And anyhow, so Cole, thank you for being here. John, thank you for being here. The reason that John Barclay is a good musician. He actually has one of his prized guitars on a wall. I can see in the background. Right. I don't have anything on the wall because I'm moving, and I wouldn't put anything on my wall that has to do with music at this point, anyhow. And so John Pedersen.
Yes, sir.
Where were we when we had to drop the ball on the other podcast when we were talking about music?
Boy, I don't quite remember. I think let's almost start back at the beginning and think about how the structure of music or the creation of music has a relationship to photography. So throw that question out.
Let's go around the room here and talk about that. Let's start with John Barclay.
Mm-hmm. C does come before J. If we were doing this alphabetically,
yeah.
But no, I'm more than willing to let John have the spotlight. Go ahead, John. Don't feel bad.
Hey, Cole. If you look at least the screen on my end here,
they really like each other.
I'm at the top right. You're at the bottom right. That means you're last.
No, on my screen, you're on the bottom.
Yeah, but my screen is the one my screen is like the one that's going to be shown in this video.
And just for the audience, they listen to our banter and might come away with the impression we don't like each other. And I want to clear that up right now. It's absolutely not true. We hate each other.
Jack and John, we just spent, why I keep doing this, we did back-to-back workshops in Death Valley last month or 2 months ago.
It was like 3 months long. It felt that way.
Now the good thing, a real metaphor for
the good thing was that my wife forced me to put in 3 days of downtime, and so Cole at the end of the first workshop says, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I want to be 3 days without you, please." And then each day, "You want to go out and shoot?" "No, I don't want to be with you."
You know that old phrase about a work wife and a work husband? I think that's your guys' relationship.
Well,
I think it'd be fun to spend 3 days with either of them.
And he's grown his hair out long enough that he is the female in this relationship. He looks like a girl.
Careful. This is 2023.
Yeah, that's true. I'm going to be careful. Okay, so let's
2023. You'll be called.
Let's get back. Yeah, that's right.
You'll be called before a House committee for saying the wrong thing.
That's true. So photography and music, Jack, you and I have talked about this too.
Correct.
Guy that immediately comes to my mind when I think about a good photographer and who's very much influenced by his music background is Tony Sweet. And jazz, right? So he's a jazz drummer, really good jazz drummer, used to teach. And when he talks about being in that state of flow as a photographer, he says it's virtually indistinguishable, the difference between that and saying, being in a jazz ensemble and the guy says, take it, or the leader turns to him and says, this is you. And when I do a couple of my lectures, I use actually music a lot because that was such a part, and it is still part of my life, but it was a bigger part when I was younger, when I was actually playing in groups. But I played with a guy, Jimmy Fryer, who still plays at the Blue Note in New York City every Wednesday night, playing traditional jazz, which is even more primitive than Dixieland, which is the band I was in with Jimmy. I was a tuba player. Jimmy was a phenomenal trombone player in high school. And when I talk about it, I say, so was Jimmy thinking he's going to play those specific notes here? Not at all. He, even in high school, when the band leader would say, take it, he just started playing. And it came from right here. And to me, that's the difference with great photographers, with the present company Cole excluded. They don't think about what's going on in the image creation process at all. It is very much coming from right here. And to me, that's where music and photography are very much alike, getting in that state of flow.
Somewhere in the bowels of my blog over 15 years or so, there's an article called Know Your Axe. And of course, axe is a jazz term for your instrument.
Yep.
And you've got to know where every button is and how the thing works, just like a saxophone or piano or trumpet, so that you can worry about being creative. And that's
Sure.
one of the things we ought to talk about. Cole, how about you? What's your feeling about this? And I know we talked about it.
Well, I don't play an instrument. I was actually a drummer early in my life, was in a rock band at age 14, a garage band, but I don't play music. But I do two things to get me into the creative mood. One of them is to read the day books of Edward Weston. Those just inspire me. The other is to listen to music. And as I listen to music, I am always amazed that, John and I can listen to hundreds, if not thousands of songs in a car. And I'm still amazed that someone can come up with something completely new and unique. And then I think about applying that to photography. Why do I have to just keep shooting like Weston or Adams or Bullock or whomever?
Or
why
Barclay.
can't I think completely new and be very creative? And so anyway, listening to music just really gets me going, especially, I hate to say it, the Beatles. Because as I look at think of their first songs, I Want to Hold Your Hand, yeah, yeah, yeah. And after that first album, the record producers are saying, the company's saying, do the exact same thing on album number 2. It's a good formula. You'll be a hit again. But they wanted to keep evolving. And as you look at how they evolved, I'm inspired by that. Yeah. And I think that should be with our photography as well. We shouldn't just keep being the same type of photographer.
You bet. You bet. I think one point I want to make for the viewers, and a lot of this discussion that we've had over the years actually around this topic, a lot of it's been around jazz music more so than rock or classical. And I think that touches a little bit on what you said, John, which it comes from the heart. And to reference, if folks heard an earlier podcast, Jack, I think you talked about a study of classical musicians and jazz musicians. And where classical musicians are really focused on technical execution of each and every single note, where jazz musicians, not so much. They play from the heart, they play from the inside, and where the technical execution isn't as important, but the emotive expression through their music is kind of the most important thing for them. And that's more the correlation for me, is the jazz music with photography and shooting from the heart and creating something from a given palette.
Can I add to that, Jack? Yeah. If I can. The one genre that I would include with that would be blues.
Yes.
I'm a huge blues fan. I'm a Stevie Ray Vaughan. I mean, to me, there's nobody who plays the guitar like Stevie Ray Vaughan does. And Stevie is playing right here, man. I mean, he knows his instrument inside out and backwards. But when I hear Stevie play to this day, I feel Stevie play, right? And as much as Al Di Meola is a great technician of a guitar, it leaves me cold. I've tried to fall in love with Al Di Meola's work, and I just don't the way I do. I have appreciation for his work and his technical prowess, but it doesn't affect me like Stevie Ray Vaughan does.
I just went to a concert last week of Kingfish Ingram. I didn't know the guy's music. I was blown away. I'm on the front row, and I think that adds to the experience. But it was absolutely amazing to see that, 24-year-old, 400-pound blues kid singing like unbelievable.
He slathers it all over his guitar. The same thing as Stevie. You feel every note that he's bending and playing.
Well, I think there's a couple things. First of all, a lot of these players play the way they do because of the way that they were brought up and how they lived. And I maintain that if you lived in Beverly Hills all your life and drove around in a pricey car and had a really great life, a lot of times you don't have that. You don't have that pent up feeling that the jazz and blues guys did, that a lot of times didn't come from very good backgrounds.
Right.
And they're speaking about their life when they play. And photographers really do the same thing. I don't think it has to do so much photography about how you grew up financially, but a lot of these great photographers that a lot of people don't look at their work anymore because the prints they're not metal prints, and they don't sound like a recording made today. When Louis Armstrong recordings that don't sound so good musically are as good as anything that's being played.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't think people look at Weston, and I don't think they look at Paul Strand, and I don't think they look at some of these old genius photographers who came up when photography was a lot tougher than it is now.
The golden age of photography in the 30s, 40s, 50s.
Technology has spoiled us terribly.
Yep.
And it was a lot tougher to learn how to be a good photographer not that long ago.
No.
A lot of these musicians go through that, and I think that they speak to the art through themselves.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that's interesting about what we do, and especially when it relates to jazz or any kind of music that has improvisation, bluegrass has improvisation.
Oh, huge.
Yeah, and blues has improvisation, and a lot of you're taking a basic idea, a subject, meaning what we drive up and look at and study, hopefully, before we decide what we're going to do photographically. And then, we kind of improvise with our cameras.
Mm-hmm.
And
I don't think everyone does, though. And that's what about that art.
That's where
the comparison between the orchestra person and the jazz player. The one is reading notes and playing precisely. The other is ad-libbing. And boy, I think that's true in the field when you see some people work with, as we see people on a photo tour who want to get every little thing technically right.
Yeah.
And
follow every rule.
Yeah.
Every rule, every technique, everything. And I think that what we do, what good photographers like you guys and a lot of people we know, what they do is that they improvise like one of these musicians does with their art. And it always doesn't have to be perfect, but it's saying what you want to say.
And I'll add to that, Jack, that improvisation, that interpretation of the scene is a little bit just like in music. It's where more of the feeling comes through. It's where more of the connection comes through. and compellingness of a photograph, and it's that interpretation that I think is a special sauce for what
So
makes
much
truly
so,
great photographs.
100%, 100%, and so much so that, you know, if you went to see the same, you know, you went to see, I pick somebody. You went to see, you know, Freddie Hubbard play 5 nights in a row, and he would play the same tune 5 nights in a row. It would be different every night.
Yep.
Yeah.
And people go out with their cameras trying to imitate an image that, you know, other people have done a lot of times, or something they've seen in a book. And if they go back a year later, they make the same damn photograph. And if they go back a year later, they make the same damn photograph.
You know, Brooks Jensen talked, I don't know when, about being inquisitive. And I don't know if that's also true in music, but I know in photography, to be able to just play a little bit. I think about my trees from a train, where I'm playing, shooting out of a moving train at trees that are very close to the car, and I start panning with the trees, and I use a long exposure and pan and get this incredible swirling distortion. And I think sometimes people don't play, they don't try to go outside the rules. They don't shoot in the noonday sun. They don't shoot into the sun. They don't do all of these things. And so they're limited, you know, of what they're supposed to do.
You could shoot other than the golden hour. Oh,
I don't even know what a golden hour
this is where I've been screwing up the last.
In black and white, what's the golden hour?
It's between noon and noon.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey,
Cole does, the only time Cole gets up before breakfast is when he's on a workshop with me. Other than that, he sleeps in. He has never done a sunrise except with me.
On his own. Wow. Hey, can we go back, and John, you had referenced kind of Tony's description, or Tony's comment around a flow state. Can you give our listeners a little bit more idea of what that is if they don't quite understand it?
To me, flow, and then athletes talk about it a lot. You know, highly trained, skilled athletes want to get to that place called flow. And I think a lot of photographers have felt that. And for me, flow is that place where I'm no longer almost present with regard to where I am at that moment in time. I'm not thinking about what appointment I have today, tomorrow, or the next day. I am really fully present with my subject at that moment in time, and even can't hear people talking to me because it's such a magical moment at that time. And it might be magical because of the quality of light that's happening, or the atmospheric condition that's all of a sudden come in with fog wafting through, and I'm in this state of euphoria. But it's that flow. I'm in flow at that point where I'm not worried about anything else but that moment at that very time. And it's almost like I've got headphones on, but I don't, and I can't hear anything else and I'm not thinking either. That's another really important thing. I just did a quick thing on Instagram that thought is the enemy of creation or creativity, right? And as soon as you get into that thinking about what the right f-stop is, how much do I need to do for depth of field, all that stuff, that's not flow. Flow in my mind is you've gone beyond all that. You have mastery of your gear so that you can just let that creative process happen in the state of flow. And it doesn't happen all the time, right? I'm not in flow every time I go make photographs. But what I am trying to do in my personal life is get better at being more present. It's hard with Cole because he talks the whole time, but try to be in the state of flow, be a better listener, be a better human, be all that, so that I can be in that state of flow more frequently.
Yeah.
Personally, I have to photograph alone because you know, you want to be in that moment and you don't want any distractions. And that's why I rarely photograph with another person. I've got to be alone.
Yeah.
To get into that state, I would agree with you too. I'm much more, I have a better chance of getting to that place by myself than with others. Because I just, you know, even with others, you feel the social pressure and you feel like the need to sort of be aware and cognizant of the other people that you're with, and
Not stay too long. Oops, sorry.
Yeah, and that is
take it
disruptive.
I would take it one step further in that, at the end of the year, you always look back and say, well, what were my, 2 or 3 best photographs of the year? And if you had 3 or 4 or 5 really good photographs a year, I think you had a good year, But I look back last year, and I picked out 4. I think I picked out 4 or 5 images, and 2 of them were on trips that I didn't even purposely go out to make a photograph.
Yeah.
I went out to drive around and just see what's going on and just get out. So, I would take it even a bit further. And
But that's different than a player in a band, isn't it? They're working in concert with other
I
people.
have to tell you, there are nights where, I'd walk into a gig, and I'd say, well, man, I really want, tonight, I'm going to nail it tonight, man. I'm going to, and it never happens. And
Yeah.
what happens is those nights that, usually it's because maybe the rhythm section's really happening, or the crowd is really receptive, or there's something that makes it just happen. And, I went down to see, I got tickets through the ad agency that I sold some images to, that had to do with Pat Metheny back.
Oh, nice.
And I got tickets and the availability to go see him play down in Austin City Limits. He's the only jazz player to ever play there.
Wow.
And the band just wasn't on. I had seen this band play this tour half a dozen times, and it just wasn't on. And I was walking out, and Metheny was standing there, and I looked up at him, and he looked at me. We don't know each other. And we smiled, and I looked, and I said, "Was it happening tonight? Was it?" He goes, "Man, it just wasn't happening tonight."
Wow.
And not
Some
every
days
night
are like that.
and not every trip is going to be successful.
Yeah,
But it's okay. It's okay.
I want to circle back to what you said, Jack, because I think it's really important. So here's a slightly different story on the one you just told. My buddy Dan Sniffen, who unfortunately passed away a year ago, we did 40 tours together.
Somebody, I don't even know the guy. I'm sure he's a nice guy, but how did anybody get through life named Dan Sniffen?
Yeah, well, he was sniffing everything. Cocaine. No, I'm kidding. That was really bad. We should probably edit that out. No, Dan was a great human being and my dear friend. And it was interesting, near the end of doing tours together, we showed up in the Smoky Mountains, and he said, "John, I'm just tired. I have no expectations. I don't have a shot list. I have nothing. And so don't worry about me if I'm napping in the car. I'm fine. I'm just tired. I'm getting old. I'm getting tired." And at the end of that week, he showed me 10 images that he made that week. Best set of images I've ever seen of his from the Smoky Mountains. So we went to the Palouse about a month later, and he says, I'm going to try that again. He says, I'm going to show up with no intentions. I'm just going to be open to whatever is going to happen. If I'm tired, I'm going to take a nap. Same thing. And wouldn't you know, in the 20 probably times he had been to the Palouse, he produced the best work. And so that got me thinking how important it is to show up in what I would call neutral. Show up in that place of being open to being taken, rather than all this expectation about what you think
About
your
driving.
images should look. And I think Jack is circling back to music now. It's the same thing, right? If you show up saying, I'm going to nail it tonight. I've been practicing this week. I got it dialed in. I know, musically, I know how to do the triplets or whatever, but in photography, I know how to focus stack. I got that dialed in now. So I'm going to go out, and this week when I make images, they're going to be the best ever. And you go out overthinking it rather than showing up open to just whatever's moving you in the music analogy. Same thing.
And continuing on that, mean, I have to tell you, you know, sometimes you never know when you get on a shoot or get on a musical job. You know, maybe there's this piano player that's sitting in that's is really not that good.
Yeah.
Or maybe the light you thought was going to happen because you're over prepared, which is another evil of mine.
Mhm.
Doesn't happen. I mean, how many times is it ever the way you think it's going to be?
Rarely.
Yeah,
Or
and it's
you're playing in a place that, you know, it's just the room sounds bad, or
Yeah.
the crowd's not, you know, just there's so many variables that as photographers we have to be just like musicians and adapt.
yeah, I
That's
mean, it
right.
goes back. I just finished an article a couple of months ago about just being reactive and being open, because being open is much more important to reading and responding to your environment. And so all of my preparation is not about shots, it's about preparing my head to be open and responsive to the stimulus that comes in when I get on location.
Amen.
Yeah,
Yep.
and
Yeah,
it's
John mentioned thinking was the enemy of
yeah,
creativity. I think expectations are. When
Oh,
you
big
go
time.
to a location with expectations, they're bound, as Jack said, not to be what you expected. And so oftentimes we go, oh crap, I didn't get it.
Yeah.
mhm,
But then the question is, what do you do next? That's the real question.
yeah,
Do you look to what is being presented? Because if the light wasn't right for that shot you imagined, it's opening up a door for a different shot you didn't imagine.
Yeah, Sarah
yes,
Marino just had a great little quick post about being in some location, and she shows the photograph, and it's sublime. I mean, it's just beautiful, you know, typical Sarah Marino greatness. But she was in a place where she could overhear an instructor with a workshop group. And I think I have this right, but essentially she was overhearing the instructor say something to the effect of, well, folks, I think we should go because, you know, the light's not what we were hoping for to get this particular shot. And so they all packed up and went, and, you know, they're all following behind that leader who is saying, this is the shot we came to get, and it's not happening. Yet you look at Sarah's shot that happened in that same identical moment, and it's sublime, right? And that's what you're talking about, Cole, right? Being open to
Well,
saying, what is here?
that's what irritates me about Zabriskie Point. As soon as the light comes up on Manly Beacon and everybody gets the shot, the parking lot went from 150 people to 0 because
Yeah.
I've got my shot. It just drives me crazy.
No,
yeah,
probably
Yeah,
went
but
from 1,500 people to 150 people these days.
yeah, that's these days. Yeah, but Cole, I have the best iteration of Manly Beacon. But you know why? Because I shot it in infrared. Nobody's ever done that before. Mine's unique and different. So
You're unique
stop,
and different, so good.
stop picking on me about my Manly Beacon shot that I shoot the same every single year. I moved over 3 feet this year from where I normally stand.
I don't
wow.
even think we should be discussing anything called Manly Beacon. Let's move on.
That's true. That's
You know,
probably illegal too.
That's
nowadays.
awesome.
I want to read you something, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit about this. And I'll edit out some of the words because people might know what's going on here. So on January 24th, 1975, memorable night for the 1,300 people that witnessed an American jazz pianist named Keith Jarrett to perform a solo recital in Cologne's Opera House. And it was recorded, and it's become a classic. A young German student part-time promoter called Vera Brandes, an avid jazz fan who was 17 and responsible for organizing the concerts, at Jarrett's request arranged for a Boisendorfer 290 Imperial concert grand piano to be provided for the show. Unfortunately, the Opera House staff wheeled out the wrong piano to a smaller Boisendorfer. To make matters worse, it was a piano used for opera rehearsals and was in abject condition and badly out of tune. So much so that Jarrett never played the lower third of the keyboard. It was so bad. That recording that was made that night was something called the Cologne concert, or Cologne, K-O-L-N in German is Cologne. And that record to date has sold over 4 million copies. And Jarrett, the genius
record.
that he is, adapted.
Yeah.
He adapted to the situation and made it happen.
I had no
I
idea
didn't
that
tell you
story.
that.
That's
You
cool.
heard this. You wouldn't know it.
Right.
That may have been the
People-
catalyst for the performance. I mean, would it have been as good if he had the proper piano in proper tune?
It would have been. It would have been good.
But
But
would
it
it
would've
have
been
been
good,
that
I'm not-
obvious?
it would have been that much better. It would have been.
Well, it would have been
been
different for sure.
different. But
Yeah.
the point is that, you know, we have to adapt to, you know, everything. And
I think there's a greater lesson than just adapting there. I see photographers who are shooting only with primes at only optimal apertures. Now we've got a discussion John and I are going to have, not shooting at third or half f-stops because there is a theory that the ISO at a third and a half is not as good. And they're looking at all of these incredibly small, absolutely imperceptible things, thinking it will make an average image great. Just as someone could have argued that his performance couldn't have been great with an out-of-tune old piano.
Yeah.
We focus on the wrong things.
correct,
Mhm.
Yeah, we really do.
Mhm.
correct.
But you know, the question I have is, why do we do that? As human beings, we have this insatiable desire to talk about gear. Do you have a thought, John?
I do. My theory, because I've thought about that very question, John, is it's so much easier to talk about settings and gear. It's
Yeah.
scientific, it's fact-based, it's empirical. When we
Well-
start talking about feeling and emotion, a lot of people, and unfortunately a lot of men, have a problem talking about feeling and coming from the heart. And those are hard concepts to
Yeah.
teach. They're hard concepts to reach a wide audience. And so we stick to the things that are fact-based and empirical because they sell cameras or things to talk about across multi-experienced, multi-generational, multiracial people. They
Yeah.
everything. And so
Yeah, you're right.
that's
And I
why
offer a
we're
slight
stuck.
twist on that
Yeah,
because I
yeah.
agree with it. But my own experiences was not just was it easier to talk about, but when you don't think that you are creative or have the capacity to be creative, you think, well, I'll have to make up for it in the technical. My images may
Right.
not be as creative as John Barclay's, but they'll be sharper because I'll be using a prime lens at f11. And I actually believed that. That I could compensate for my lack of creative ability by excelling in the technical. That was me for 35
Yeah.
years.
Yeah. It's gotten
But
so
you're
bad
right.
for me that I go out of my way to not talk about technical things because I want to talk about creative things. I want to talk about feelings, stuff from the heart, because that's where art is, in my opinion. Whether it's
John, I've been
music
trying to
or
get Cole to talk about feelings too, and he stinks at it. I'm like,
He
how
keeps
do you
playing
feel
that
about?
song "Feelings" on the radio, thinking that's somehow going to get me to open up.
That song is one of the 3 worst tunes
Oh, come on now.
ever written. You want to know the other 2?
Yes, I
Having my
do.
baby, having
better not
my
be
baby. You're a
Raindrops
woman
Keep
in
falling
love.
on my head. What's the name of that tune? Is that
Raindrops keep falling on my
yeah,
head.
raindrops
name of
keep
it?
falling on my head.
Butch Cassidy.
That's
Yeah,
that's
that's one
Burt
of them.
Bacharach, isn't it?
Yeah, I think
Yep.
so.
Yeah.
You think that's a terrible song?
Oh, it's horrible.
Okay, what's the third? It better not be a Beatles
And the
tune.
other one is a tune called "Joy to the World."
I love that song by Three Dog Night.
Jeremiah was a
I
bullfrog.
couldn't tell you who did it. I just know it's
Three
horrible.
Dog
I
Night.
love that song.
Oh my gosh, Jack. Okay, I'm hanging up.
Okay,
Michael,
let me ask you guys another question. So we've sort of equated music and photography and kind of talked about feeling from the heart. Does that same sort of symbiosis or similarity, sorry, I can't find my S words today, exist with other art forms and photography? Is it
Absolutely.
I've talked to
Pardon?
painters who agree with music, the relationship between painting and music.
okay?
I'm listening to a really good podcast right now that somebody just sent me.
We talk photo.
It's yeah, it's what is her name? Hirschfield, the poet Hirschfield, and it's really fascinating podcast because she talks about her process And I just wrote to the person, I'm only like halfway through it, but I had to stop and write to my friend who is a photographer and say, this is so affirming, because her process as a poet is the same thing. She says, there's no way I can be thinking about my calendar, what's on TV, reading email, and write poetry. It can't happen. You know, she has to be in that place where she can receive the words, and that's her language, receive the words that are going to be presented to her. And so
I always tell people, if you're going out to photograph, never check your mail.
yeah.
I mean, anything that comes in a mailbox anymore, it's usually, unless they're records, which I get a lot of, you know, roundings, 12-inch roundings. Usually it's not good news. It's usually bills or something not good. And you know, if you're in that frame of mind, you're going to have an issue.
Yep. Yeah, it's hard.
I just think that when people, and I'm going to leave photo workshops out of this, because this is they're a different animal. I mean, that's a different animal. But when people go out to, you know, with a camera in their car, whether they take it out or not, that's up to them. But again, preconceived notions will kill you, and just not being in the pressure of having to make a good photograph will kill you. And there's so many variables. I mean, but and it's the same in music. I mean, you know, I have to tell you that some of the best nights I've had were nights that I thought weren't going to be that great, and they turned out to be wonderful. You know, John, you play the guitar. Other than that, do you play piano or anything?
No, the only instruments I would say that I play with any accomplished, you know, ability, it would be trumpet. I played for 8 years, and then they needed a baritone horn player. So I played that very short couple of years in junior high school. And then I played tuba, became my passion, and again, played in the Dixieland band professionally.
You know who Harvey Phillips was?
I know the name, but I'm not.
Harvey Phillips was a tuba professor at Indiana when I was there. He's the one who started that tuba thing on Christmas.
Oh, the band? The big,
yeah.
That's
and
what
we used to play. You know, I used to play with a Dixieland band out at his ranch in Bloomington. And
Dixie is a lot of fun to play. I miss those days.
It's all good.
Fun. But I mean, Jack, and then
even the Beatles have some redeeming qualities. And you know, I again, you know, I'm the worst person to talk to about music, because I have really very narrow ideas about what I like and what I don't like. But I think it's really important that people appreciate some kind of music, and I don't really care what it is. It could be heavy metal, or it could be ambient music, which I know a few people who listen to. You know, I don't know how you appreciate that, but you know, it's important to appreciate that. And I think as photographers, here's another idea. I think it's important to listen to. Be open to some other kinds of art, whether it's music or writing or something, because you'll see the parallels.
Oh gosh,
you will. I want to go back to what Cole said around preparation, how you listen to music, and that's one of the things that I do as well. It's because music can really affect our moods, and the energy that's within us, and even the chemicals that are within us, based upon pleasure or you know, just our moods releases chemicals. And so I use music as a tool to relax, energize, focus, distract, whatever it may be, to clear my head in order to take photographs or even process. I mean, I have music on all day long.
I can't process with music on. I was just going to bring that up. I just can't do those two things at the same time. Isn't that odd?
Yeah, that's cool.
I actually have certain pieces of music and certain recordings that I listen to when I'm in certain areas of the country. You know, when I'm in the Eastern Sierra, I was certain
banjos.
No, I listened to a Matheny record as I drive down that S curve coming into Lee Vining from
from Conway Summit.
Yeah, I don't think I could do it anymore. And I've gotten to the point where I could do that trip from the top to the bottom without using my brakes. It was pretty good. But I'd have a Matheny thing from a record called Secret Story on.
I
Let's do it.
love that.
I open the windows and fly down that hill and smell that sage. And man, it's just
Paul, you should probably stop listening to death metal. I think then your images would not be so dark. It's so dark. And by the
But
way,
you know,
Paul, you should open up your shadows a little bit because they're a
it's
little dark.
it's a funny thing. You can listen to a lot of composers wrote the way they were. You read Mahler's biography and then listen to his music.
Yeah, dark.
You know, I've
And
had
as he
several
got
people
older
write
and
me.
sicker, he got angry.
I had several people write me and ask me if I was dark and depressed, had a dark and depressed personality because I have dark images. I thought that was interesting. I don't.
That is interesting.
But one of the greatest photographers, Ansel Adams, was a pretty decent pianist.
A great pianist.
And and people look at his black and white work and they think he's this stoic old curmudgeon on top of a car with the 8x10. He was a nutcase. He was a
He was
party
the life
animal.
of the party.
He was the life of the party.
Yeah.
And I mean, these are perceived things that same thing with musicians and other artists.
Well, Jack, you began the program talking about sometimes the jazz or blues players had these hard lives. And I think when I was growing up, I always was taught that great artists had to struggle and had to have hardship. And I'm not sure I believe that.
No, I don't believe that either. I think they struggle because that's life. That's life of an artist is not easy.
Life is not easy, period.
Yeah, I mean, but if you're an artist, I mean, it's just
That's tough. Rick Rubin's got a good book out that you ought to read too. I mean, if you know who Rick Rubin is, he's behind so many great musicians, and it's really not a book about. I was kind of hoping it'd be a book about music, because I love music so much, but it's not. It's a book about how to be, and how to live a life that you can be more creative. It's kind of interesting, actually. I've underlined.
I'll tell you what I would recommend people reading in that vein is some of Guy Tal's work.
Oh my gosh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because Guy hits that on the head, and maybe we ought to do this again and get Guy on.
And he's brilliant.
Other people, because Guy is, people. I've had a lot of people ask me, because I'm 110 years old. They ask me, what are the 5 most memorable things that you remember from your photographic career? And probably 3 of them have nothing to do with photography. Guy and I used to sit up in Murphy's Motel in Lee Vining till like 1, 2 in the morning sometimes, talking about music and other things that had nothing to do with photography. And man, I'm talking to Guy Tal, and this is like, I mean, I'm like a pea rolling down an 8-lane highway compared to Guy, and what an experience. But he really has nailed, the creative life in some of his writings. Really nailed it
Really well.
Really explains it really, really well. So I think, John, we'll think about doing that. Maybe we'll get.
I think we could. That's
maybe we can get Tony on. I owe Tony a phone call.
Yeah.
He
would love it.
Listen to this.
Well, we'll keep this going, because I mean, I think a lot of what we're talking about is just that it's how to tap into your own personal creativity. Number one, musicians do it, photographers do it, other artists do it. How to get into that flow state by removing distractions and whatever else, preparation, and I think it's a great subject that I want to keep talking about with folks, because that it's full of such great energy to throw out into the world that I want to keep doing it. So
Good.
Yeah.
I hear you, John. I don't think it's that complicated.
No. Well, it is for some, because we have so much I think we have a lot of societal baggage on us that means that we can't tap into our feelings and emotions and be okay sharing that. And so people aren't practiced with how to get to that place where I'm shooting from the heart.
Mhm.
I think it has to do, and don't take this the wrong way, but I think it has to do with age and being around a little bit. And the older I get,
The
the
grumpier you
easier it
get.
is for me to get to even attempt to get creative, because frankly, I don't give a damn.
Scarlett.
I really, so I don't give a damn.
Yeah.
I could care less. I could care less if anybody likes anything I do anymore. I don't care. I
One
mean,
of the
hope
few
they do.
advantages of age.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it is.
I just think you get to a point where, it's not over by any means. I still am all excited about the
Well,
future.
I look at that too, Jack, though, as a form of self-confidence, where you're really secure and confident in what you do, and you do it for yourself and yourself alone, that you don't need any other validation.
I'm secure that if my cameras got run over by a truck today, and I couldn't afford to buy another camera, that I'd still be okay.
Yeah, 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 exactly.
And it's still, I still love what I do, but again, maybe it's age. I don't know.
Wisdom. How about that?
That
Why I hang around with Cole, for his wisdom.
yeah.
Not as silky smooth hair.
Well, I'll
No.
tell you
He's being
what.
facetious, believe me, if he says
He
that.
won't
Tell you
let me
what.
touch his hair.
My mom told me when I was very young, back, we had a potbelly stove in an outhouse. I'm only kidding. But she told me she's always hang around people who are better than you are.
Yeah.
And I didn't have too much trouble finding out.
That's why
But-
Cole hangs around me. It makes him feel smarter.
But what an honor. And John and I talk about this all the time, to have the roster of people that we've had on this podcast.
Yeah,
For me to know you guys and Guy and and a lot of the masters, hell, the Galens and the Shaws and all these guys. I grew up learning from these guys, and now those of them who are still alive, they're all my friends.
Yeah.
How cool is that? So
Yeah,
cool.
very.
hang around with creative people. I've got a couple of clients who are just unbelievable woodworkers. What they build, I can't spell wood,
yeah.
and
Well,
what they
it,
build is incredible. It's
you know,
just,
Jack, to your point, I think this is probably the last point before we should wrap it up. But hanging out with other creative people, pursuing a creative thing, is such a life enriching experience, I think. And this is not about successful life, and this journey is not about what you have and what you've done necessarily. It's the memories, it's the feelings, it's the experiences, I think. And so hanging out with creatives just really enriches your life.
let me tell you, at the end of your career, end of your life, if you can count a handful of really good friends and a whole lot of really good acquaintances that you've lived and learned from, you had a great life.
Yeah, good memories.
And
Good memories. All right, folks. So on that somber note,
John,
John,
I think
Cole.
we're going to pick this up again.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing, and do it again. So I know we have a couple seconds here. What are you guys up to? Where are you leaving again for another?
Yeah, I leave for Namibia tomorrow on a trip that's been canceled 3 times. But the next thing that Cole and I are doing is we're heading back to the Faroe Islands in July, right? And then we'll be doing Death Valley again next year. As a matter of fact, that's posted, and I think there's only 1 spot left at this point.
And I keep bringing up, let's do the Easter Island, because I figure if I keep talking about it, I'll finally get John to commit to it.
Yeah, we were really close to doing that. And Cole and I also have, I see that we influence you guys to steal our idea of having a YouTube channel.
Stealing our idea. That's how I like to.
All right.
Actually,
Yeah,
we had a lot of people who said, well, you guys better get with the 20. We used to do this on Skype, so we made a big jump from Skype to
Wow,
YouTube.
Skype.
We come into the
Skype to Zoom, and then Zoom to
21st
YouTube.
century. And
So
now
we've
we've
got-
got this YouTube channel. And I'll tell you what, if anybody's out there that wants to listen to jazz, I don't normally talk about this here, or listen to some ideas from jazz, especially jazz vinyl. and jazz records. If you go to YouTube and type in "Straight Talk with Jack," I don't talk about photography at all on there. It's all about jazz.
Well, if you want to hear incredibly insightful wisdom about photography, go see the Cole and John show.
All right.
On
All right.
YouTube.
I'll subscribe.
The Barclay and Thompson show.
No,
No,
he's
no.
such a
You
baby.
don't-
It had to
don't.
be Cole and John.
Okay, trivia for everybody. The Tonight Show theme. Who wrote it?
No
I
idea.
have no idea.
Manfred
Paul
Mann.
Anka.
Oh.
Paul who?
Paul Anka.
No.
Did he really?
Yes. And the
Wow.
rumor was he was paid $500 every time they played it.
You know what else he wrote? She's having my baby.
Yeah, well, you know what? I could tell you Paul Anka stories because I was on that.
No, I don't think we have time for those, Jack.
He's got to go.
Yeah.
Hey,
All
thanks
right,
for
everybody.
having us.
Let's see. So how do we end this, John? It's been a week. We talk photo at
At gmail.com.
for comments, questions, you know, whatever. And what else? John's gonna put up some show notes. I don't know.
Yep. I'll put up some of that, and that's really
And
about
then,
it.
of
You
course,
guys
the
know the
YouTube
drill.
channel. John, what's the YouTube channel? It's just We Talk.
We
Photo.
Talk Photo.
Is it one word or 3 words?
I don't even remember, Jack.
You guys sound as technical savvy as we
Yeah.
do.
Well, we're so technical oriented, you know, we don't, you know.
I'll put a link in the show notes. Visit our webpage. You'll have a link to our YouTube channel,
There you go.
or search 3 words We Talk Photo, and our channel will come up on YouTube.
There we go.
Yep.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you, Cole. You're the best.
Thank you.
John, you're the best. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks
And
for having us.
I'll be in Tennessee 3 weeks from tonight. So
Yeah.
All right. Good luck.
we're out of here.
All right.
John.
Okay,
Bye,
guys.
John.
Thank you, guys. Bye
Talk
bye.
to you soon.